All right, so in your program, it's gonna say back extension of some kind, whether it's GHD, 45 degree, what have you. So the main thing to remember with that exercise is the exercise is actually more of a hip extension. So what I mean by that is when you do the exercise, your spine's gonna stay relatively neutral. You're gonna rotate your pelvis this way, anteriorly rotate, and then you're gonna drive your hips into the pad, come up here. And with that exercise, you're mainly working the hamstrings and the glutes. So all it looks like is you're here, come up, down, up. You can adjust this based on what you want to emphasize more. So the more parallel you make your body with the floor, the more you're going to emphasize that peak glute contraction and when you're hitting that end hip extension. The problem with it is that you don't get a lot of resistance on the bottom of the exercise. So normally with this exercise, you'll normally have that big like half circle pad that sits on here. It makes it a little bit more comfortable. I don't have it yet for this machine, but basically you'll get the general idea though. So when you do this, what happens is when you do this variation of it, you don't get a ton of resistance down here, but then it gets really hard here at the top. That's kind of the downside of doing it that way. Generally, the more vertical you make the machine, the more it's going to train the hamstrings, especially on the bottom position because you really stretch the hamstrings out. I usually like to shoot for like a 30 to 45 degree angle. I think that just kind of gives you like the best overall training effect for the posterior chain with your lower back and glutes or hamstrings. If you want to bias towards the glutes a little bit more with the exercise, what I'll do is I'll externally rotate my feet on the foot plate here. So I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so this is set to 45 degrees. And basically all I'll do is, instead of having my feet, so this is set to 45 degrees right now, but instead of having my feet like this on the foot plate, I'll bring my feet out wide and I'll kind of turn my feet out. And base, so it just looks like that. And then same thing, just come down and then come up. So by turning the feet out, you kind of bypass the hamstrings so they're not able to contribute as much to the exercise. So if you're trying to bias the training effect onto the glutes, by externally rotating your feet, kind of bring your feet out a little bit more, you place the hips in a position where you're training the glutes in that very short position because the glute maximus kind of operates through this line of pull. It's not necessarily straight front and back, but technically it kind of goes across the body and then sweeps out this way. So by kind of bringing your feet into that end position anyways, you can really get that like good shortened position on the glute max. If you need to load the exercise, I usually just use a barbell, but I mean, scale it to your ability level. So most people, when they start initially using this as like a weighted version, they will start off holding like a plate on their chest or something. Sometimes people will just hold like a bar down here. They'll do it like that. Personally, I really like just taking a barbell and loading it on my back. So I'll show what that looks like real quick. So this is one of the other reasons why I really prefer the 30 to 45 degree back extension as opposed to the GHD or the one where you're more parallel with the floor, is A, you get like a smoother force profile with this variation, and B, it's easier to load because it's way easier to get in and out of the machine. With the GHD one, it's kind of a pain because you have to get into the machine, and then you usually have the bar laying on the ground, you gotta reach down, you gotta try to, get it behind your neck, and if you're by yourself and you have decently heavy weight, it starts to suck after a while. With this one, you can just start off. Usually you can just start off with the bar on your shoulders and then just step into the machine. So normally you just step into the machine like this, and then you go about doing your set. There are variations of this. If you do want to kind of train your lower back a little bit more in a dynamic fashion, you can set this so you do round in the lower back, and this is probably one of the safer ways to train the lower back musculature. I'll set this pad up a little bit higher so the pad kind of comes up in here and it gives you a little bit more support. And then once you're there, you can just rotate through the back this way and then come up. More generally with this this back extension, one of the things you want to keep in mind is a lot of people call it the back hyperextension machine, the back extension machine. The way we're going to program this exercise is it's more of a hip extension. So when you come to the top position on the exercise, one of the biggest things a lot of people do is they kind of come up, they don't quite extend their hips out all the way, and they really overextend their lower back. What we want to do is we want to keep the spine neutral, but we're really driving our hips down into the pad. So yeah, one of the common faults is people come down, they'll come up, and then they'll do this in their spine, but their hips don't really extend any further. What we want to do is we want to keep the spine the same and really drive the hips forward. And that really puts a lot more of the emphasis onto the glutes as opposed to the musculature of the spine. So anyways, that's the back extension exercise. Feel free to hit me up with any questions and then I'll get back to you.